There are moments in life when something deep inside tells you to slow down. It feels quiet but powerful. Many believers describe this as a warning from the Holy Spirit. It does not shout, it whispers. Yet those whispers can change the direction of a person's life. In the Christian journey, learning to recognize spiritual guidance is very important. Many people pray for answers, but when the answer arrives, they do not recognize it. God often sends signals through peace, discomfort, closed doors, or sudden conviction in the heart. These warnings are not meant to scare believers, they are meant to protect them. Just like a loving parent warns a child about danger, God gives guidance so His people can avoid mistakes that bring pain and regret. In this message, we will explore urgent warnings every believer should understand. These are signals that many people overlook. But when you learn to recognize them, your faith becomes stronger, your decisions become wiser, and your path becomes clearer. Sometimes life appears calm on the outside, yet inside your heart there is a strange discomfort. Nothing dramatic has happened, but you feel uneasy about a decision or direction. Many believers experience this moment. It often feels like a quiet alarm inside the mind that cannot easily be ignored. This inner feeling is not always fear or imagination. In many cases, it is a form of spiritual awareness. God designed the human heart with the ability to sense danger before it fully appears. When believers walk closely with faith, that awareness becomes stronger. People often ignore these signals because logic tells them everything should be fine. A job offer may look perfect. A relationship may appear promising, but deep inside, something does not feel right. This internal warning deserves attention. Wise believers pause when this happens. Instead of rushing forward, they slow down and reflect. Listening carefully during these moments can protect a person from choices that may lead to confusion, disappointment, or emotional pain later. One of the greatest gifts believers experience is peace. True peace does not come from money, status, or achievements. It comes from a deep sense of calm inside the heart. This calm often acts like a compass that helps guide decisions. However, there are moments when that peace suddenly disappears. A decision that once felt right begins to feel heavy. You may feel restless, uncertain, or strangely uncomfortable. These emotional shifts are sometimes early warnings. Many people ignore this signal because they believe success requires pushing forward at any cost. But faith teaches something different. When peace disappears, it may be a moment to stop and reconsider the situation carefully. Taking time to reflect during these moments can prevent serious mistakes. Sometimes the loss of peace is simply a reminder to slow down, evaluate your path, and make sure your choices align with truth, wisdom, and integrity. Every believer experiences moments when they realize they have made a mistake. This realization can feel uncomfortable, but it serves a powerful purpose. It helps guide a person back toward the right path. There is an important difference between guilt and conviction. Guilt often creates shame and discouragement. Conviction, however, creates awareness and invites change. It gently pushes a person toward growth and correction. Many people misunderstand this feeling and try to silence it. They distract themselves with work, entertainment, or busy schedules. But ignoring that inner correction can allow small problems to grow into larger ones. Recognizing conviction as guidance can transform a person's life. Instead of feeling defeated, a believer can use that moment as an opportunity to adjust their behavior, repair relationships, and strengthen their character. Throughout life, many believers pray for direction. They ask for wisdom, clarity, and protection. Yet when guidance arrives, it may not come in the dramatic way they expect. Sometimes guidance appears through repeated reminders, quiet thoughts, or wise advice from others. When these messages appear again and again, they may carry deeper meaning. Ignoring these messages repeatedly can slowly distance a person from wise decision-making. The more someone dismisses helpful warnings, the easier it becomes to overlook them in the future. But those who choose to listen often discover something powerful. Paying attention to guidance can lead to better decisions, stronger relationships, and a life that moves in a more stable and meaningful direction. In life, many people believe that every closed door means failure. They feel frustrated when opportunities disappear or plans suddenly collapse. But sometimes a closed door carries a hidden blessing. There are moments when an opportunity looks exciting on the surface but may lead to serious problems later. When that door closes, it may actually protect a person from unnecessary hardship. Successful and wise individuals often recognize this pattern. They understand that not every rejection is negative. Sometimes it redirects them toward a better path. Instead of reacting with frustration, a patient believer takes time to reflect. They ask whether the closed door might be guiding them towards something healthier, wiser, or more meaningful. At unexpected moments, a person may feel a strong desire to pray or reflect deeply. This feeling can appear suddenly without an obvious reason. It may happen during quiet moments, while walking, or even in the middle of a busy day. Many believers describe this as a powerful inner pull. It encourages them to step away from distractions and reconnect with faith. These moments often create clarity and renewed focus. Ignoring this urge can cause a person to miss valuable guidance. But when someone responds and spends time in reflection, they often discover new understanding about their situation. This habit strengthens spiritual awareness and emotional balance. It allows believers to slow down, clear their minds, and approach life's challenges with calm thinking and deeper wisdom. Relationships play a powerful role in shaping a person's direction. Sometimes people enter your life with positive influence, encouragement, and wisdom. Other times, certain connections slowly begin to create confusion, stress, or emotional pressure. Many believers notice that as their faith grows, their relationships begin to change. Some friendships grow stronger, while others slowly fade away. This shift can feel painful at first, but it often carries an important message about personal growth and maturity. When someone constantly pulls you toward negativity, unhealthy habits, or poor decisions, it becomes necessary to step back and evaluate the relationship carefully. A wise person learns to recognize when a connection is helping their life and when it is quietly damaging their progress. Choosing healthier relationships does not mean rejecting people with anger. Instead, it means protecting your peace and surrounding yourself with individuals who support honesty, respect, and personal growth. These connections create stability and encouragement during difficult times. Every human being is given a conscience. This quiet voice inside the mind often helps people recognize the difference between right and wrong. It may appear as a small hesitation before making a questionable decision. At first, this voice may seem easy to ignore. People may convince themselves that the situation is not serious or that no one will notice their actions. But the more someone ignores their conscience, the quieter it becomes. When the conscience speaks strongly, it often signals that a person is approaching a choice that could bring regret later. This moment becomes an opportunity to pause and reconsider the path ahead. Those who respect their conscience develop stronger character over time. They learn to trust that inner signal and allow it to guide them toward honesty, responsibility, and wiser choices. Temptation is something every person faces. It can appear in many forms, such as shortcuts to success, dishonest opportunities, or actions that promise quick satisfaction but carry hidden consequences. Interestingly, temptation often becomes stronger when someone is close to achieving something meaningful. At that moment, distractions and poor choices may appear more attractive than ever. This is why awareness becomes very important. When temptation increases, it may be a sign that an important turning point is approaching. Recognizing this moment allows a person to stay focused and avoid mistakes that could destroy progress. Strong discipline and clear thinking help believers stay on the right path. By choosing patience and integrity, they protect their future and maintain the respect of those around them. One of the quiet warning signs many believers experience is a gradual loss of interest in spiritual growth. Activities that once brought inspiration may begin to feel distant or unimportant. This shift rarely happens suddenly. Instead, it grows slowly through distraction, stress, or the pressures of daily life. Over time, people may replace meaningful reflection with endless entertainment or constant busyness. When this happens, it becomes important to pause and ask honest questions. What has changed in your priorities? What habits have replaced the activities that once strengthened your faith? Reconnecting with meaningful practices can restore clarity and motivation. When someone intentionally returns to reflection, learning, and thoughtful conversation, they often rediscover the purpose that once guided their life. Sometimes guidance arrives through words that seem strangely personal. A message, a teaching, or a written passage may suddenly feel as if it speaks directly to your situation. Many people describe moments when a single sentence changed their thinking completely. It may answer a question they had been struggling with for weeks or even months. These moments often happen when someone is open and searching for understanding. When the mind is ready to receive wisdom, even simple words can carry powerful meaning. Taking time to reflect on these messages can provide direction during uncertain seasons. Instead of ignoring them, wise individuals allow those insights to shape their next steps. Major mistakes rarely begin with dramatic decisions. More often, they begin with small compromises that seem harmless at first. A person may justify a small shortcut or excuse a minor dishonesty. Over time, these small compromises slowly build into larger problems. What once felt uncomfortable may eventually begin to feel normal, which makes the situation even more dangerous. Recognizing this pattern early can protect someone from serious consequences. When a small compromise appears, it becomes an opportunity to correct the direction immediately. People who protect their integrity in small moments build strong character over time. These daily choices shape a life that is built on honesty, responsibility, and trust. There are moments when a person suddenly feels the need to step away from a situation. It may involve a conversation, a business deal, or an environment that no longer feels healthy. At first, it may be difficult to explain this feeling to others. Everything may appear acceptable on the surface, yet something deep inside urges you to reconsider your involvement. This instinct should not be dismissed quickly. Many people later realize that their early hesitation was a form of protection that could have saved them from future trouble. Choosing to walk away from the wrong environment requires courage. But those who make this decision often find themselves moving toward opportunities that align better with their values and long-term goals. Life sometimes delivers messages through repetition. You may hear the same advice from several people within a short period of time. You may encounter the same idea in different books or conversations. When a message appears repeatedly, it may deserve closer attention. These moments often signal that an important lesson is trying to reach you. Many successful individuals admit that they ignored early warnings in their lives. Later, they realized that guidance had been appearing around them in many forms. Listening carefully to repeated messages can reveal valuable direction. It encourages reflection and helps people recognize patterns they may have overlooked before. Pride can quietly grow inside the heart without being noticed. It often begins when success, praise, or recognition becomes a regular part of someone's life. At first, confidence may feel harmless, but when confidence turns into pride, a person may stop listening to advice, ignore constructive criticism, and believe they cannot make mistakes. This attitude can slowly damage relationships and personal growth. When someone believes they already know everything, they stop learning from others. Maintaining humility protects a person from these dangers. Humble individuals remain open to wisdom, correction, and new perspectives that strengthen their character. The words people speak often reveal what is happening inside their minds. Negative language, constant complaining, or harsh criticism can reflect deeper emotional struggles. When someone begins to speak differently than before, it may signal that their thoughts and feelings are changing as well. Language becomes a mirror of the inner world. Paying attention to these changes can help a person recognize when stress, frustration, or discouragement is growing inside them. Choosing more thoughtful words can gradually transform attitudes and relationships. Positive communication creates healthier conversations and encourages mutual respect. There are situations where a person suddenly feels restless or uncomfortable without a clear reason. The environment may seem normal, yet something feels out of place. Many people describe this sensation as a quiet signal that something deserves closer attention. It may indicate hidden tension, dishonesty, or a situation that requires caution. Ignoring this feeling can lead someone into unnecessary conflict or trouble. But recognizing it allows a person to slow down and observe more carefully. Taking a step back during these moments can reveal details that were previously overlooked. This awareness helps individuals make wiser decisions about where they invest their time and energy. Delays are often one of the most frustrating experiences in life. When plans move slowly or opportunities seem postponed, people may feel discouraged or impatient. However, delays sometimes create unexpected protection. Extra time allows individuals to gather more information, reconsider choices, and avoid rushing into risky situations. Many successful people later realized that a delay prevented them from making a serious mistake. What once felt like a setback became a hidden advantage. Learning patience during these seasons builds resilience and wisdom. It reminds believers that timing plays a powerful role in the outcome of every important decision. Sometimes an ordinary conversation delivers a message that feels deeply personal. A friend, mentor, or even a stranger may say something that suddenly captures your attention. These moments can feel surprising because the person speaking may not realize how meaningful their words are to you. When this happens, it can be helpful to reflect on the message rather than dismiss it quickly. Often these conversations provide clarity about situations that have been confusing. Thoughtful listening allows a person to discover guidance in unexpected places. Wisdom often arrives through simple interactions that appear ordinary at first. One of the most dangerous patterns in human behavior is the habit of justifying wrong choices. People often create explanations that make poor decisions seem reasonable. At first, these explanations may feel convincing, but over time, they weaken personal integrity and blur the difference between right and wrong. Recognizing this pattern early can prevent serious consequences. Honest self-reflection helps individuals confront their decisions with clarity and responsibility. When a person chooses honesty over excuses, they regain control of their direction. This commitment to truth builds stronger character and creates a life based on accountability and respect. There are moments when a believer begins to feel uncomfortable in environments that once felt normal. A place that once seemed harmless suddenly creates inattention. Conversations may feel negative. The atmosphere may feel heavy. This shift is often a quiet signal that something around you is no longer healthy for your spiritual growth. Many people ignore this feeling because they do not want to appear different from others. They continue participating in activities that slowly weaken their focus values, and discipline. Over time, this can create inner conflict that affects peace and clarity. Wise believers learn to observe these changes carefully. When an environment begins to influence your character in the wrong direction, it becomes necessary to evaluate whether staying there is truly beneficial. Growth sometimes requires stepping away from places that pull you backward. Choosing healthier environments protects your faith and mindset. Surrounding yourself with people and places that encourage honesty, wisdom, and positive behavior allows your spiritual life to remain strong and stable. Another warning believers often experience is when distractions begin to replace meaningful focus. Life becomes busy, schedules become full, and important spiritual habits slowly disappear. Prayer becomes shorter, reflection becomes rare, learning becomes occasional instead of consistent. This change rarely happens suddenly. It develops slowly through daily choices. Social media, entertainment, and endless responsibilities can quietly take the place of activities that once strengthened your faith and understanding. When believers begin to notice this shift, it becomes an important moment of awareness. Losing focus on what truly matters can weaken spiritual strength and create confusion during difficult situations. Rebuilding focus requires intentional effort. Setting aside quiet moments for reflection, prayer, and learning restores balance and reminds believers of the purpose that guides their lives. Sometimes believers sense emotional pressure that seems difficult to explain. It may feel like tension inside the heart or mind. Situations that once seemed simple suddenly feel complicated and heavy. This pressure can appear when a person is approaching an important decision. The mind begins to recognize possible consequences, risks, or moral conflicts connected to that choice. Ignoring these feelings can lead to rushed decisions that later bring regret. But recognizing them creates an opportunity to slow down and examine the situation with wisdom and patience. Taking time to think carefully allows believers to avoid unnecessary mistakes. When decisions are made calmly and thoughtfully, they often lead to better outcomes and stronger faith. A healthy heart naturally feels compassion for others. Kindness, empathy, and patience become part of everyday behavior. However, there are moments when a person begins to lose this compassion without realizing it. Stress, frustration, or pride can slowly harden the heart. People may become more critical, more impatient, and less understanding of others' struggles. This change can damage relationships and weaken spiritual character. When believers notice that kindness is fading, it is an important warning sign. A hardened heart often leads to decisions that create distance between people and destroy trust. Restoring compassion requires humility and reflection. Choosing patience and kindness again softens the heart and rebuilds healthy connections with others. Life occasionally brings moments when a person feels a strong need to change direction. A path that once seemed promising no longer feels right. New thoughts begin to appear about different possibilities. This shift can feel confusing at first. Many people hesitate because they fear leaving behind something familiar. However, growth often requires courage to move toward a new direction. Believers who recognize this inner guidance often discover that change leads to unexpected opportunities. What once looked like uncertainty becomes a doorway to greater purpose. Listening carefully during these moments allows a person to align their decisions with wisdom and long-term vision. Sometimes the greatest progress begins when someone has the courage to change course. Another warning believers must recognize appears when honesty begins to weaken in small ways. A person may start telling small lies, hiding information, or avoiding responsibility for mistakes. These actions may seem minor at first, but they slowly damage character and trust. Once honesty begins to fade, it becomes easier to justify larger compromises in the future. The Holy Spirit often warns believers through discomfort during these moments. A quiet feeling reminds them that their actions do not match their values. Choosing honesty again restores integrity and peace. When believers correct their behavior quickly, they protect their reputation and maintain strong relationships built on trust. Fear can sometimes become louder than faith. When believers begin to make decisions only based on fear, it often signals that something inside needs attention. Fear may appear through constant worry about the future, fear of failure, or fear of what others may think. These thoughts can slowly control choices and limit personal growth. Recognizing this pattern is important. Fear should never become the main guide for life decisions. Wisdom requires balance between caution and courage. Believers who confront fear with faith and thoughtful action regain confidence. They learn that challenges can become opportunities for growth rather than reasons to retreat. Another important warning appears when a believer stops seeking wisdom. At first, a person may eagerly learn, read, ask questions, and explore deeper understanding of faith. But over time, pride or comfort may lead them to believe they already know enough. Curiosity disappears, learning stops, growth becomes stagnant. When spiritual learning ends, personal development also slows down. A mind that stops seeking wisdom becomes vulnerable to poor judgment and misunderstanding. Remaining open to learning keeps the heart humble and the mind sharp. Continuous growth strengthens faith and prepares believers for future challenges. Gratitude plays a powerful role in maintaining spiritual balance. When believers regularly appreciate blessings in their lives, they develop a positive perspective and strong faith. However, there are moments when gratitude slowly disappears. Complaints become more frequent. People begin focusing only on problems instead of blessings. This change in attitude can create negativity that spreads into every part of life. Relationships suffer, motivation decreases, and hope becomes weaker. Restoring gratitude transforms the mindset again. When believers intentionally recognize the good in their lives, they rediscover joy, peace, and renewed motivation. Another warning sign appears when a believer becomes overly influenced by public opinion. Instead of following truth and conviction, they begin shaping their decisions around approval from others. The desire to please everyone can lead people away from their values. They may compromise beliefs, silence their voice, or follow trends that conflict with their faith. This pressure often appears slowly. Social influence, cultural expectations, and fear of criticism can gradually change a person's priorities. True strength comes from remaining faithful to truth even when others disagree. Believers who stand firmly on their values build a life based on courage and authenticity. Sometimes believers notice they are losing patience more easily than before. Small inconveniences trigger frustration. Simple conversations become arguments. This change can reveal deeper stress or spiritual fatigue. When patience disappears, relationships often begin to suffer. Recognizing this warning early allows a person to pause and examine their emotional state. Stress, exhaustion, and unresolved issues often lie beneath impatience. Restoring patience requires rest, reflection, and renewed focus on personal growth. A calm spirit strengthens relationships and improves decision-making. Another warning appears when a believer begins comparing their life constantly with others. Social media, public success stories, and competition can create unhealthy comparison. Instead of focusing on their own path, people begin measuring their value against the achievements of others. This habit can create jealousy, discouragement, and unnecessary pressure. Comparison steals joy and distracts believers from their personal purpose. Every life follows a unique timeline and direction. When believers refocus on their own growth, They regain peace and clarity. Contentment allows them to move forward with confidence rather than insecurity. Financial decisions can also reveal important warnings. When greed begins to influence choices, priorities often become distorted. A believer may begin chasing wealth at the expense of integrity, relationships, or spiritual values. Money itself is not harmful, but obsession with it can lead to dangerous decisions. Recognizing this warning helps believers maintain balance. Financial success should never replace character, honesty, or compassion. Wise stewardship and responsible choices create stability without sacrificing personal values or spiritual health. Another warning appears when believers isolate themselves from supportive community. Healthy spiritual life often includes encouragement from others who share similar values. When someone withdraws completely, they lose accountability and support. Isolation can make it easier to drift away from healthy habits and wise decisions. Community provides perspective, encouragement, and correction when necessary. Trusted voices help believers remain balanced and focused. Reconnecting with supportive relationships strengthens faith and restores a sense of belonging and direction. Sometimes believers become so focused on personal goals that they forget the importance of serving others. Life becomes centered only around personal success. This shift can slowly create selfish thinking. Compassion and generosity begin to fade, while ambition becomes the main focus. Recognizing this change is important because true spiritual growth includes helping others and contributing positively to the world. When believers return to serving others with kindness and humility, their lives regain deeper meaning and purpose. Another warning appears when believers begin making important decisions without reflection or prayer. Life becomes rushed and reactive. Important choices are made quickly without considering consequences or seeking wisdom. This pattern often leads to unnecessary mistakes. Taking time for reflection before major decisions creates clarity and confidence. Calm thinking allows believers to consider long-term outcomes. Thoughtful decision-making protects a person from regret and leads to more stable and successful results. Pride sometimes appears in subtle ways through the refusal to accept correction. When someone cannot receive advice, growth becomes difficult. Every person needs guidance at different stages of life. Ignoring helpful correction often leads to repeated mistakes. Wise believers recognize that constructive feedback is valuable. It reveals blind spots and encourages personal improvement. Accepting correction with humility strengthens character and builds stronger relationships with those who care about your growth. Another important warning appears when believers lose hope during difficult seasons. Challenges may create discouragement that slowly weakens faith. Life always includes obstacles, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty. However, losing hope can cause people to abandon dreams and stop pursuing meaningful goals. Recognizing discouragement early allows believers to seek encouragement, wisdom, and renewed strength. Hope restores motivation and reminds believers that difficult seasons are temporary parts of a much larger journey. Some warnings appear through repeated mistakes. When the same problem continues appearing in different forms, it may signal a deeper lesson that has not yet been learned. Ignoring these patterns can lead to cycles of frustration. The same outcomes repeat because the root issue remains unchanged. Reflection helps believers identify the habits, attitudes, or decisions that create these repeating problems. Learning from these patterns allows a person to break the cycle and move forward with greater wisdom and maturity. Finally, one of the most important warnings believers must recognize is the slow loss of purpose. Life may become routine, mechanical, and directionless. When purpose fades, motivation often disappears as well. People begin living day by day without clear vision or meaningful goals. This moment invites deep reflection. What truly matters in your life? What direction are you moving toward? Rediscovering purpose renews energy and focus. When believers reconnect with their calling and values, their life gains clarity, passion, and lasting impact. One warning believers often experience is a growing sense of emptiness, even when life appears successful on the outside. A person may achieve goals, earn money, or gain recognition, yet deep inside something feels incomplete. This quiet emptiness can feel confusing because everything looks fine from the outside. Many people try to fill this feeling with more work, entertainment, or material success. They believe another achievement will remove the emptiness. But the more they chase these things, the more they realize the feeling remains. This moment often becomes a powerful signal that life has drifted away from deeper purpose. When spiritual focus weakens, external success cannot fully satisfy the human heart. Wise believers pause when this feeling appears. Instead of chasing more distractions, they reflect on their priorities and reconnect with values that bring meaning, peace, and genuine fulfillment. Another warning appears when believers begin losing self-control in small daily habits. Simple disciplines such as patience, honesty, or responsible behavior slowly begin to weaken. At first, these changes may appear harmless. A person may justify them as temporary stress or normal behavior. However, small habits shape character over time. When discipline fades, larger problems often follow. Poor habits can affect relationships, career decisions, and personal credibility. Recognizing this pattern early gives believers the chance to correct their behavior before serious consequences appear. Strengthening daily discipline restores balance and protects a person's long-term reputation. Sometimes believers experience a strong desire to hide certain actions from others. They may avoid honest conversations or feel uncomfortable when someone asks simple questions about their decisions. This reaction often signals that something inside the heart feels uneasy. When people feel the need to hide their choices, it may indicate that those choices conflict with their values. Avoiding transparency can slowly damage trust. Relationships become weaker when honesty disappears and secrecy takes its place. Returning to openness and accountability rebuilds confidence and integrity. Honest living creates peace because there is nothing to hide or fear. Another warning believers should recognize appears when anger begins to grow quickly and frequently. Situations that once required patience suddenly trigger strong emotional reactions. Anger itself is a natural emotion, but uncontrolled anger can damage relationships and cloud judgment. When it becomes frequent, it may signal deeper frustration or unresolved issues. Ignoring this change can lead to words or actions that create long-term damage. Many people later regret the things they said during moments of uncontrolled emotion. Recognizing this warning encourages believers to pause, breathe, and address the real source of their frustration. Developing emotional control protects both relationships and personal peace. There are moments when believers begin to feel spiritually distant, even though their daily routines continue as normal. They attend gatherings, follow habits, and maintain responsibilities, but something feels disconnected inside. This distance often appears gradually. Busy schedules, stress, and distractions slowly replace meaningful moments of reflection and connection with God. When this happens, many people simply continue their routines without addressing the deeper issue. Over time, the distance grows stronger and faith begins to feel weaker. Recognizing this moment as a warning invites believers to intentionally reconnect with their spiritual life. Honest prayer, learning, and quiet reflection restore closeness and clarity. Another warning sign appears when believers constantly rush through life without taking time to reflect. Days become filled with responsibilities, deadlines, and endless tasks. Living in constant hurry can prevent a person from noticing important signals about their life direction. Reflection becomes rare, and decisions are made quickly without deeper thought. This lifestyle often leads to exhaustion and confusion. People may achieve many things yet feel unsure whether they are moving in the right direction. Slowing down creates space for wisdom. When believers take time to think, pray, and evaluate their path, they often discover insights that were impossible to notice in constant motion. Some warnings appear through repeated conflicts with others. When the same type of argument happens again and again, it may reveal a deeper pattern. At first, a person may blame others for these conflicts. They may believe everyone around them is difficult or unfair. However, repeated patterns often reveal something about our own behavior or attitudes. Recognizing this possibility requires humility and honesty. When believers examine their role in these conflicts, they often discover opportunities for growth. Changing one behavior or attitude can transform many relationships. Another warning appears when believers stop appreciating simple blessings in life. Daily experiences that once brought joy now feel ordinary or unimportant. Over time, this mindset can create constant dissatisfaction. People begin focusing only on what they do not have rather than recognizing what they already possess. This perspective can drain motivation and happiness. It creates a constant feeling that life is never good enough. Restoring appreciation for simple blessings changes the entire outlook on life. Gratitude strengthens faith and reminds believers that many valuable gifts already exist around them. Sometimes believers notice that their thoughts become increasingly negative. Doubt, worry, and criticism begin to dominate the mind. Negative thinking can influence every part of life. It affects decisions, relationships, and even physical health. When these patterns grow stronger, it becomes important to recognize them as warnings rather than permanent reality. Replacing negative thoughts with truth, encouragement, and wisdom gradually transforms the mindset. A hopeful mind sees opportunities instead of only problems. Another warning believers must recognize is the habit of postponing important changes. A person may know that something in their life needs correction, but they keep delaying the decision. They may say they will address it next month, next year, or when life becomes easier. Unfortunately, delayed decisions often allow problems to grow larger. Ignoring necessary change rarely makes situations better. It usually creates deeper consequences that become harder to fix later. Taking action early demonstrates courage and wisdom. When believers respond to warnings quickly, they prevent small issues from turning into major crises. There are times when believers begin losing motivation for meaningful goals. Dreams that once created excitement suddenly feel distant or impossible. This loss of motivation may come from disappointment, fear of failure, or exhaustion from previous struggles. When this happens, many people abandon their goals completely. They settle for comfort rather than pursuing growth. Recognizing this moment as a warning encourages believers to renew their vision. Revisiting their purpose often restores energy and determination. Another warning appears when a believer becomes overly critical of others. Instead of encouraging people, they constantly notice faults and weaknesses. This mindset can slowly damage relationships and create unnecessary tension. People begin avoiding conversations because they feel judged rather than supported. Often this behavior reflects inner frustration rather than the actual behavior of others. Choosing understanding and patience transforms interactions. When believers focus on encouragement instead of criticism, they build stronger and healthier relationships. Sometimes believers notice that their priorities slowly begin to shift. Activities that once held great importance are replaced by distractions that provide only temporary satisfaction. Entertainment, status, or material pursuits may begin occupying more time than meaningful growth. This shift can happen so gradually that it goes unnoticed for a long time. Recognizing this warning allows believers to realign their priorities and return their focus to what truly matters in life. Another warning appears when someone becomes unwilling to forgive. Holding on to past offenses may feel justified, but it creates emotional burdens that damage peace. Unforgiveness often keeps people connected to painful memories and prevents healing. Over time, resentment can influence thoughts, conversations, and even physical well-being. Choosing forgiveness does not excuse harmful behavior. Instead, it frees the heart from carrying the weight of anger and allows healing to begin. Believers sometimes experience a warning when they begin avoiding personal responsibility. It becomes easier to blame circumstances or other people for problems. While external factors can influence life, refusing responsibility prevents personal growth. People who constantly shift blame rarely learn from their experiences. Accepting responsibility creates opportunities for improvement and maturity. Honest self-evaluation helps believers grow stronger after every challenge. Another signal appears when believers start ignoring wise advice from trusted mentors or friends. Sometimes pride or stubbornness causes people to believe they must face every situation alone. However, wisdom often comes through those who have more experience or a clearer perspective. Listening carefully to trustworthy voices helps believers avoid mistakes and make balanced decisions. There are moments when believers feel unusually tired or emotionally drained for long periods. This exhaustion may not come only from physical work. Constant stress, worry, and unresolved problems can create deep mental fatigue. Ignoring this warning can lead to burnout and poor decision-making. Taking time for rest, reflection, and renewal restores strength and helps believers regain clarity. Another warning appears when someone begins compromising their values for temporary benefits. A person may justify actions that once felt completely unacceptable. These compromises often begin small, but gradually weaken moral boundaries. Protecting personal values ensures long-term respect, stability, and trust from others. Sometimes believers notice that they have stopped dreaming about the future. Life becomes routine without excitement or vision. Without vision, motivation fades and daily actions lose meaning. This warning encourages believers to rediscover their goals and purpose. Renewed vision restores enthusiasm and reminds people that their lives can still create positive impact. Another warning appears when believers stop celebrating the progress they have already made. They may focus only on remaining challenges and forget the growth that has already occurred. This mindset can create discouragement and unnecessary pressure. Recognizing progress builds confidence and gratitude. It reminds believers that every step forward matters. There are moments in a believer's life when silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Instead of seeking quiet moments to think, reflect, or pray, a person may start filling every moment with noise and distraction. Music, social media, endless scrolling, and constant activity begin to replace the calm moments that once allowed the heart to listen carefully. At first, this change may seem harmless. Many people live busy lives, and entertainment is a normal part of daily routine. But when someone constantly avoids quiet reflection, it can slowly disconnect them from deeper awareness about their life direction and personal choices. Silence often reveals thoughts that people try to ignore. It may bring attention to decisions that need correction, relationships that require honesty, or habits that need change. When a person avoids silence, they may also be avoiding these important truths. Recognizing this warning encourages believers to create intentional quiet moments again. In silence, clarity often appears. Many people discover that the answers they were searching for begin to surface when they finally slow down and listen. Another important warning believers must recognize appears when honesty with oneself begins to fade. A person may start telling themselves comfortable stories that justify certain actions or behaviors. For example, someone may convince themselves that a questionable decision is acceptable because everyone else is doing it. They may explain away mistakes rather than confronting them honestly. Over time, this pattern creates a dangerous form of self-deception. When people stop being truthful with themselves, they lose the ability to evaluate their actions clearly. True growth requires honest self-examination. When believers face their weaknesses with humility, they gain the power to change and become stronger individuals. Sometimes believers notice that they are constantly searching for approval from others before making decisions. Instead of trusting wisdom and personal conviction, they depend heavily on public opinion. This desire for approval can quietly control many aspects of life. People may change their behavior, silence their beliefs, or follow trends simply to avoid criticism. Living this way slowly weakens confidence and personal identity. A person begins shaping their life according to other people's expectations rather than truth and integrity. Recognizing this warning helps believers return to a life guided by conviction and faith. When decisions come from inner wisdom rather than external pressure, life becomes more authentic and stable. Another warning appears when believers begin to treat important commitments lightly. Promises that once carried great meaning may slowly lose their seriousness. A person may start canceling plans frequently, ignoring responsibilities, or speaking words they do not truly intend to honor. This behavior may appear small at first, but it gradually damages trust. Commitment is a foundation for strong relationships and personal credibility. When it weakens, people around you begin to question reliability and sincerity. Recognizing this warning encourages believers to restore integrity in their words and actions. Honoring commitments builds respect and strengthens the trust others place in you. There are times when believers become overly comfortable with routines that require little effort or growth. Life becomes predictable and easy, but personal development begins to slow down. Comfort itself is not wrong. Everyone needs moments of rest and stability. However, when comfort becomes the main goal, people may avoid challenges that could strengthen their character. Growth often happens when individuals step outside familiar routines and face new responsibilities or opportunities. Recognizing this warning motivates believers to pursue progress again. Challenging experiences often lead to greater wisdom, maturity, and confidence. Another warning believers must recognize appears when conversations become dominated by negativity. Instead of speaking with hope, encouragement, or wisdom, a person may constantly discuss problems and frustrations. Over time, this habit can influence the atmosphere around them. Friends and family may feel discouraged rather than inspired after conversations. Words carry powerful influence. They shape attitudes, emotions, and relationships. Negative speech can slowly create a pessimistic outlook on life. Choosing words carefully can change this pattern. Encouraging language builds stronger connections and spreads hope instead of discouragement. Sometimes believers begin comparing their progress with others so frequently that it creates deep insecurity. Instead of appreciating their own journey, they constantly measure their achievements against someone else's success. This habit often leads to feelings of inadequacy. A person may believe they are falling behind, even when they are making meaningful progress in their own life. Comparison can steal joy and motivation. It distracts individuals from their unique calling and purpose. Recognizing this warning allows believers to focus again on their personal path. Every journey unfolds at a different pace, and growth should be measured by progress, not comparison. Another warning appears when believers become too focused on temporary pleasures. Entertainment, comfort, and short-term satisfaction begin to dominate daily priorities. While enjoyment is a natural part of life, excessive focus on temporary pleasures can slowly weaken discipline and long-term vision. People may neglect responsibilities, postpone important goals, or ignore opportunities for growth. Balancing enjoyment with responsibility allows believers to maintain both happiness and progress in life. There are moments when believers may feel the urge to distance themselves from people who offer honest advice. Instead of appreciating constructive guidance, they may view it as criticism. This reaction often occurs when pride begins influencing the heart. Accepting correction becomes uncomfortable, and avoiding those conversations feels easier. However, wise advice often protects people from serious mistakes. Recognizing this warning encourages believers to remain open to feedback. Those who listen carefully to wise counsel gain valuable insights that strengthen their decisions. Another warning believers should recognize appears when gratitude slowly disappears from daily life. Complaints may begin replacing appreciation. A person may focus only on problems, forgetting the many blessings already present. This mindset can create constant dissatisfaction and emotional heaviness. Restoring gratitude transforms perspective. When believers regularly recognize the good around them, hope and peace return. Sometimes believers experience a warning when they begin avoiding difficult conversations that require honesty. Instead of addressing problems directly, they remain silent to keep temporary peace. While silence may prevent immediate conflict, unresolved issues often grow larger over time. Relationships suffer when important truths remain unspoken. Facing these conversations with courage and respect allows healing and understanding to begin. Another warning appears when a person begins neglecting personal health and well-being. Long hours of stress, poor sleep, and lack of rest can weaken both body and mind. Ignoring physical health eventually affects emotional stability and decision-making. Many believers become so focused on responsibilities that they forget to care for themselves. Recognizing this warning encourages balance. Caring for the body allows believers to maintain strength for their responsibilities and purpose. Sometimes believers notice that they have become overly serious about minor problems. Small issues begin to create large emotional reactions. This pattern can drain energy and create unnecessary stress. Learning to place challenges in proper perspective helps restore calm thinking. When believers approach problems with patience and wisdom, many situations become easier to resolve. Another warning appears when believers stop celebrating the achievements of others. Instead of feeling happy for someone's success, jealousy or resentment may appear. These emotions can quietly damage friendships and personal peace. Recognizing this warning allows believers to correct their attitude quickly. Celebrating the success of others strengthens relationships and builds a spirit of unity. There are times when believers become trapped in past regrets. They replay old mistakes repeatedly in their minds. While learning from the past is valuable, living in constant regret prevents progress. Holding on to past failures can destroy confidence and hope. Recognizing this warning encourages believers to learn the lesson and move forward with renewed determination. Another warning believers should recognize appears when they begin avoiding responsibility for helping others. Life becomes focused only on personal goals, comfort, and success. Compassion and generosity slowly fade from daily actions. Restoring a spirit of service brings deeper meaning to life and strengthens human connection. Sometimes believers begin losing curiosity about truth and wisdom. Learning becomes less important and personal growth slows down, this warning signals the need to renew the desire for knowledge and understanding. Curiosity keeps the mind active and the spirit engaged in meaningful growth. Another warning appears when believers become overly dependent on their own strength without seeking guidance. Confidence is valuable, but complete independence can lead to pride and poor judgment. Recognizing the need for wisdom and guidance creates better decisions. Humility opens the door to learning and improvement. There are moments when believers feel disconnected from community and supportive friendships. Isolation may feel comfortable for a while, but long-term separation weakens emotional strength. Healthy relationships provide encouragement, accountability, and wisdom. Reconnecting with trusted people restores balance and support. Another warning believers must recognize appears when they begin losing excitement about their purpose. Daily life may start feeling repetitive and directionless. Without purpose, motivation fades and goals lose meaning. Rediscovering purpose renews energy and helps believers move forward with confidence and hope. Believers sometimes experience an inner warning when they notice a growing sense of distraction in daily life. Tasks that once seemed purposeful now feel mechanical, and attention shifts easily from one trivial thing to another. Even during moments of reflection, the mind wanders, unable to focus on meaningful thoughts or personal growth. This subtle change often goes unnoticed at first, yet it quietly chips away at clarity, discipline, and spiritual awareness. Distractions can take many forms. Social media, endless notifications, entertainment, and constant activity can occupy a person's mind while their deeper goals remain neglected. The more someone indulges in these distractions, the further they drift from intentional living and thoughtful decision-making. Over time, small distractions accumulate into a state of mental and emotional fatigue. This inner unrest is often a warning signal that the priorities in life have begun to shift. What was once important, growth, reflection, meaningful relationships, now becomes secondary to fleeting pleasures and shallow engagements. Ignoring this warning can slowly lead to a life that feels empty, rushed, and directionless, despite outward accomplishments. Recognizing this signal requires courage and honesty. Believers who choose to pause, evaluate, and redirect focus often experience a renewed sense of clarity and purpose. By intentionally eliminating unnecessary distractions, they reclaim time for reflection, learning, and deliberate action, which strengthens both personal and spiritual growth. Another critical warning appears when believers feel a creeping sense of fear that limits their decisions. Small doubts or anxieties begin to influence daily choices, making people hesitant to take steps they once approached with confidence. These fears often grow quietly, starting as minor worries and gradually escalating into a consistent inner voice that questions every move. Fear can manifest in subtle ways, such as reluctance to start new projects, avoidance of challenges, or second-guessing personal capabilities. While caution is natural, persistent fear signals that something deeper is impacting trust and faith in oneself. Over time, these fears can paralyze progress, robbing people of opportunities to grow or experience meaningful breakthroughs. The presence of fear is not meant to discourage, but to alert believers that attention is needed. This inner warning encourages introspection, reflection, and discernment about the areas where courage and faith are required. Ignoring the fear often allows it to expand, controlling choices without awareness. Responding wisely to this warning restores balance and resilience. Believers who confront fear intentionally, embrace patience, and seek clarity find that fear diminishes as understanding and confidence grow. Courage is strengthened not by avoiding fear, but by acknowledging it and taking deliberate steps forward despite uncertainty. Believers often sense a warning when they begin feeling emotionally drained without a clear reason. Energy that was once available for work, relationships, and personal growth seems depleted. leaving fatigue, frustration, and mental fog. This exhaustion may not have an obvious source, but signals that something in the inner or outer life has shifted in a way that demands attention. Emotional depletion can be caused by constant stress, unresolved conflicts, or unbalanced priorities. When personal or spiritual needs are neglected, the mind and heart become overworked, making even small tasks seem overwhelming. This silent warning often signals a need for rest, reflection, and realignment with purpose. Ignoring these feelings can result in burnout, mistakes, and weakened decision-making. Believers may find themselves reacting emotionally rather than thoughtfully, which can harm relationships and personal integrity. The subtlety of this warning often leads people to dismiss it, which can magnify long-term consequences. Acknowledging emotional fatigue and taking deliberate steps to restore balance creates resilience. Pausing for reflection, engaging in restorative activities, and reevaluating priorities enables believers to regain focus, energy, and spiritual clarity. Addressing this warning strengthens both mental health and purposeful living. A profound warning occurs when a believer notices that their sense of joy or contentment begins to fade. Daily activities that once brought satisfaction and peace now feel dull or unfulfilling. Moments that should spark gratitude instead leave emptiness, indicating a quiet shift in perspective or focus that should not be ignored. This fading joy often arises from overemphasis on external achievements or comparisons with others. People begin measuring their lives against ideals that do not reflect their own path, creating a sense of dissatisfaction and frustration. Even success can feel hollow if the heart is disconnected from purpose and gratitude. This warning signals a need to reconnect with authentic sources of joy. It reminds believers to pause, reflect on blessings, and return attention to relationships, personal growth, and meaningful pursuits that bring genuine fulfillment. Ignoring this emptiness can lead to ongoing dissatisfaction despite outward accomplishments. Reconnecting with what naturally brings contentment restores perspective, motivation, and emotional balance. When joy is nurtured intentionally, it strengthens resilience, optimism, and the capacity to handle challenges while maintaining a sense of inner peace and purpose. Another warning emerges when believers find themselves increasingly anxious about things they cannot control. Situations, opinions, and outcomes that were once manageable now create worry and tension. These recurring thoughts take mental and emotional energy, often leaving individuals feeling trapped in uncertainty. Anxiety in small matters may appear harmless at first, but over time it erodes confidence, clarity, and decision-making. When a person is preoccupied with uncontrollable variables, they begin neglecting areas where focus and action could make a real difference. This warning indicates a need to surrender control, where appropriate, prioritize wisely, and distinguish between actionable steps and factors beyond influence. By acknowledging the limits of control, believers gain mental freedom and emotional stability. Practical response to this warning involves reflection, acceptance, and deliberate focus on productive actions. Redirecting energy toward meaningful goals restores clarity, reduces stress, and strengthens both decision-making and personal resilience in the face of uncertainty. Believers sometimes experience a warning when their relationships begin to feel strained for no obvious reason. Communication may feel tense, support may appear absent, and minor misunderstandings escalate quickly. These changes signal that attention is needed to assess both internal emotions and external interactions. Relationship strain often arises when expectations, unspoken needs, or unresolved tensions accumulate over time. Believers may neglect honest dialogue or fail to address concerns, allowing subtle conflicts to grow silently beneath the surface. Ignoring these signals can result in broken trust, miscommunication, and isolation. Problems that are small today may evolve into conflicts that are much harder to resolve later, impacting both personal and spiritual life. Recognizing the warning encourages proactive dialogue, empathy, and intentional relationship care. By addressing tensions early, clarifying expectations, and fostering understanding, believers can restore connection, trust, and harmony in their relationships. Another warning appears when believers notice an increasing tendency towards self-doubt. Decisions that once felt simple now cause hesitation. Hesitation grows into anxiety and confidence diminishes. Even achievements may be questioned, creating a loop of internal criticism that undermines growth. Self-doubt often arises when individuals allow negative thoughts, criticism from others, or comparison with peers to dominate perception. Over time, this subtle erosion of confidence impacts productivity, relationships, and personal fulfillment. This warning signals a need to restore perspective and build inner assurance. Believers must reflect on past successes, embrace lessons learned, and remind themselves of their unique strengths and purpose. Rebuilding confidence involves deliberate self-reflection, affirmation of personal values, and focus on small, consistent victories. As confidence grows, believers can make clearer, more decisive choices and embrace challenges without fear or hesitation. Believers sometimes sense a warning when routines become repetitive and devoid of meaning. Daily habits continue, yet excitement, creativity, and inspiration slowly fade. The same activities may feel monotonous, leaving the heart unengaged and the mind restless. Repetition itself is not harmful, but when it leads to stagnation, spiritual and personal growth can stall. Over time, the comfort of routine may blind individuals to opportunities for learning, growth, and meaningful engagement. Ignoring this warning often results in disconnection from purpose and diminished motivation. Life may feel mechanical, as if moving through motions without genuine direction or passion. Recognizing the signal encourages intentional change. Introducing challenges, reflection, and deliberate growth activities revitalizes life. By breaking monotony, believers reignite passion, purpose, and the energy needed to pursue long-term goals. Another warning emerges when a believer begins to experience repeated inner resistance to making decisions. Indecision may take over, even for choices that once felt simple. This internal hesitation may appear subtle at first, but it signals an important inner alert that something needs evaluation. Indecision often arises when there is uncertainty about priorities, values, or outcomes. Without reflection, hesitation grows and begins to interfere with productivity, confidence, and personal growth. This warning is designed to encourage careful assessment, not panic. By taking time to consider options thoughtfully, weigh consequences, and reflect on purpose, believers gain clarity that supports effective action. Responding to this warning involves intentional analysis, patience, and clarity-seeking practices. Once the decision is made with awareness and wisdom, progress resumes with renewed confidence and direction. Believers often experience a warning when gratitude becomes scarce in daily life. The mind may focus on lack, comparison, or perceived failures instead of blessings and achievements. Over time, dissatisfaction replaces appreciation, creating emotional heaviness and tension. This scarcity of gratitude can subtly influence relationships, mindset, and overall satisfaction with life. When appreciation fades, joy diminishes and hope can weaken. Recognizing this warning invites deliberate cultivation of gratitude. Reflecting daily on blessings, victories, and meaningful moments restores emotional balance and perspective. As gratitude is nurtured intentionally, believers experience renewed joy, resilience, and optimism. Life becomes richer, relationships strengthen, and personal purpose feels alive and vibrant again. Believers sometimes sense a warning when they start ignoring small, repeated signs in life. Subtle feelings of discomfort, repeated mistakes, or gentle nudges from intuition may go unnoticed or dismissed. Over time, ignoring these signals can lead to larger problems that could have been prevented early. These small warnings often appear in habits, relationships, or repeated thoughts. They might feel minor or inconvenient, which makes people rationalize them away, believing they are overreacting or imagining things. When ignored, these small warnings grow louder and begin to impact personal growth, decision-making, and emotional balance. The mind becomes overloaded, opportunities are missed, and relationships can suffer unnecessarily. Recognizing these early signals requires attention and honesty. Believers who pause, reflect, and act on subtle alerts often prevent larger challenges, strengthen intuition, and develop stronger discernment for future decisions. Another warning appears when a believer notices that hope is slowly fading. Once optimistic thoughts may now be replaced with uncertainty or doubt. Goals that were exciting no longer inspire energy, leaving a sense of stagnation and emotional fatigue. This loss of hope often arises when external challenges, setbacks, or repeated failures overshadow personal progress. Believers may begin feeling that nothing is moving forward, even when consistent effort is being made. Ignoring this warning leads to prolonged discouragement and missed opportunities for growth. A lack of hope can influence mindset, emotional resilience, and overall life satisfaction. Responding requires intentional reinforcement of purpose, reflection on progress made, and rekindling faith in future possibilities. Believers who actively restore hope regain energy, focus, and the courage to pursue meaningful goals. Believers often experience a warning when their mind becomes clouded with constant worry. Thoughts that once were manageable escalate into anxiety loops, causing distraction, sleep disruption, and reduced clarity. This persistent worry often stems from an overfocus on potential outcomes, fear of failure, or concern about others' opinions. Over time, it erodes confidence and prevents decisive action. Ignoring this internal alarm often allows worry to control decisions, relationships, and productivity. Without intervention, mental exhaustion and discouragement may grow. Recognizing worry as a warning encourages reflection, prioritization, and proactive action. Believers who channel energy towards solutions and release control over what cannot be changed regain peace and purposeful clarity. Another warning appears when a believer notices a decline in patience. Small frustrations that were once tolerable now trigger irritation or anger. Simple challenges feel overwhelming, creating tension and conflict with others. This reduced patience is often linked to stress, fatigue, or unaddressed emotional burdens. It signals that attention is required to restore balance and mindfulness. When ignored, impatience negatively impacts relationships, decision-making, and long-term goals. Tension may escalate and communication can become strained. Recognizing the warning encourages strategies to cultivate calm, mindfulness, and emotional awareness. Believers who strengthen patience regain peace and develop stronger relationships with themselves and others. Believers sometimes sense a warning when self-discipline begins to falter. Habits that once maintained focus, productivity, and spiritual growth slowly weaken, leaving routines inconsistent and progress stagnant. This decline often begins subtly, with minor compromises that seem harmless at first. Over time, these small lapses accumulate, impacting effectiveness, confidence, and personal integrity. Ignoring the warning allows bad habits to take root, creating patterns that are increasingly difficult to change. Motivation and purpose may diminish without consistent effort. Recognizing this pattern early enables believers to intentionally reinforce discipline, set boundaries, and rebuild routines. Strengthened self-discipline ensures long-term growth, achievement, and personal resilience. Another warning occurs when comparison with others begins to dominate thoughts. Instead of focusing on personal growth, Believers measure themselves constantly against the achievements of peers, leading to jealousy, insecurity, and discouragement. This pattern often develops gradually, amplified by social media, public perception, and cultural pressures. Over time, it undermines confidence and diverts energy from personal goals. Ignoring this warning leaves a person vulnerable to unhappiness, distraction, and indecision. Growth slows when attention is fixated on what others are doing rather than personal purpose. Responding involves refocusing on personal progress, celebrating small victories, and acknowledging unique strengths. Believers who break free from comparison regain motivation, confidence, and clarity of purpose. Believers sometimes experience a warning when complacency begins to settle in. Goals that were once pursued with passion feel less urgent, and routine becomes comfortable but unproductive. This subtle shift often appears as satisfaction with minimal effort, over-reliance on comfort, or avoidance of challenges. While comfort feels safe, complacency prevents growth and stunts potential. Ignoring this warning allows stagnation to persist, creating a life that feels ordinary and unfulfilled. Opportunities for advancement, learning, and transformation may pass unnoticed. Recognizing complacency and intentionally pursuing new challenges restores momentum. Believers who embrace growth, accountability, and proactive decision-making reignite purpose and long-term progress. Another warning appears when priorities begin to shift subtly from meaningful actions to trivial distractions. Time that once nurtured personal growth, learning, or service becomes consumed by entertainment, busyness, or fleeting pleasures. This shift often happens unconsciously, slowly replacing productive habits with passive engagement. Over time, it erodes focus, reduces motivation, and diminishes long-term achievement. Ignoring this warning creates patterns that leave believers unfulfilled, stressed, or disconnected from purpose. The heart becomes restless while life seems consumed by unimportant activities. Responding involves intentional evaluation of time, focus, and energy. Believers who realign priorities with purpose, values, and meaningful goals regain focus, satisfaction, and emotional balance. Believers sometimes notice a warning when generosity and compassion fade. Acts of kindness become rare, empathy diminishes, and focus shifts primarily to self-interest. This internal change may develop gradually due to stress, fatigue, or disappointment. Over time, it erodes relationships and diminishes personal and emotional fulfillment. Ignoring this warning can create a cycle of isolation, selfishness, and lost connection. Hearts hardened by self-focus may miss opportunities to serve, inspire, or build meaningful relationships. Responding requires intentional reflection, empathy cultivation, and recommitment to service. By prioritizing kindness and generosity, believers restore emotional depth, meaningful connection, and inner joy. Another warning appears when inner guidance begins to feel faint or ignored. Intuition, conscience, or subtle nudges often provide insight about decisions, people, or situations. Yet believers may dismiss these signs in favor of convenience or distraction. Ignoring these internal cues can lead to choices that contradict values or result in unnecessary struggles. The voice that once guided decisions quietly diminishes if not nurtured with reflection and mindfulness. Recognizing this warning encourages believers to pause, listen, and evaluate thoughts and feelings carefully. Paying attention to intuition strengthens discernment and supports better decision-making. By cultivating awareness, believers develop clarity, wisdom, and confidence. Listening to internal guidance restores alignment with purpose, prevents mistakes, and fosters spiritual and emotional growth. Believers sometimes experience a warning when emotional resilience begins to weaken. Situations that were once manageable feel overwhelming, and small challenges create disproportionate stress or frustration. This weakening often signals fatigue, unresolved issues, or imbalance in mental, emotional, or spiritual health. Over time, vulnerability grows, affecting relationships and personal decision-making. Ignoring this warning may lead to burnout, poor judgment, and conflict with others. Emotional instability can create ripple effects across every area of life. Responding involves rest, reflection, and intentional emotional strengthening. Believers who cultivate resilience regain stability, confidence, and the capacity to navigate challenges effectively. Another warning appears when self-reflection diminishes. Moments of pause, examination, and honest evaluation of choices, habits, and attitudes slowly disappear. Life may feel busy, yet insights and personal growth stagnate. This absence of reflection often leads to repeated mistakes, poor decisions, and a slow drift from purpose. Without introspection, negative patterns may go unnoticed. Ignoring this warning allows inefficiency, miscommunication, and lack of awareness to accumulate. Opportunities to learn from experiences are lost. Recognizing the need for self-reflection restores perspective. Believers who consistently evaluate thoughts, habits, and behaviors foster personal growth, clarity, and wisdom. Believers sometimes sense a warning when external approval becomes more important than personal integrity. Decisions may be made to please others rather than follow conviction, truth, or ethical principles. This behavior gradually erodes confidence, creates inner conflict, and diminishes the ability to act decisively. Over time, dependence on validation undermines growth and self-assurance. Ignoring this warning leaves individuals vulnerable to manipulation, stress, and dissatisfaction. Choices made for appearances rarely align with long-term purpose. Recognizing this signal encourages believers to prioritize integrity and conviction. Acting with honesty and alignment with values strengthens identity, confidence, and authentic fulfillment. Another warning appears when a person begins to feel restless in the absence of change. Life may feel stagnant, yet the individual avoids opportunities for growth due to fear, hesitation, or comfort. This internal unrest signals a need to evaluate priorities, passions, and purpose. Remaining passive can deepen dissatisfaction and hinder potential progress. Ignoring this warning prolongs frustration, stagnation, and missed opportunities. Emotional and spiritual energy may be wasted on dissatisfaction without action. Responding involves embracing challenges, seeking knowledge, and taking deliberate steps toward growth. Believers who act courageously transform restlessness into purposeful momentum. Believers sometimes sense a warning when accountability diminishes. They may stop sharing challenges or progress with trusted mentors, friends, or community, creating a subtle isolation. This isolation can allow poor habits, unresolved struggles, or unexamined choices to grow unchecked. Over time, the lack of accountability reduces personal and spiritual growth. Ignoring this warning can lead to repeated mistakes, relational strain, and compromised values. Without oversight, subtle drift becomes magnified. Reestablishing accountability restores clarity, guidance, and support. Believers who embrace trustworthy counsel remain grounded, disciplined, and aligned with long-term goals. Another warning appears when decision-making becomes impulsive. Choices that once were deliberate and careful now feel rushed or emotionally driven, often without sufficient consideration of consequences. Impulsiveness may develop due to stress, distraction, or diminished reflection. Over time, poor choices accumulate, creating challenges that could have been avoided. Ignoring this warning jeopardizes relationships, financial stability, and personal growth. Mistakes made impulsively are often harder to correct later. Recognizing the pattern allows believers to slow down, assess options, and make informed decisions. Thoughtful action restores confidence, stability, and progress toward meaningful goals. Believers sometimes experience a warning when gratitude is replaced with entitlement. a sense of deserving more rather than appreciating what exists, subtly takes hold, leaving dissatisfaction and resentment in its place. This mindset can grow quietly over time, eroding perspective, relationships, and personal joy. Achievements or blessings no longer bring satisfaction. Ignoring this warning can create long-term unhappiness and relational strain. Life may feel frustrating, regardless of actual progress or success. Responding requires intentional practice of appreciation, reflection on achievements, and acknowledgement of support received. Gratitude restores perspective, joy, and emotional resilience. Another warning appears when spiritual or personal growth begins to feel optional rather than essential. Believers may prioritize comfort, routine, or distractions over learning, reflection, and meaningful action. This subtle shift creates a gradual drift from purpose and reduces awareness of internal or external warning signals. Over time, growth stagnates, and life may feel shallow or disconnected. Ignoring this warning allows complacency to dominate, diminishing potential and fulfillment. Opportunities for transformation may be missed without intentional attention. Recognizing the need for continued growth restores momentum. Deliberate action, learning, and reflection reinforce purpose, focus, and meaningful progression in life. Believers sometimes sense a warning when anxiety begins controlling daily life. Even small uncertainties provoke worry, and tasks that were once manageable feel overwhelming. This increasing anxiety often signals imbalance in priorities, thought patterns, or emotional resilience. When persistent, it affects relationships, productivity, and well-being. Ignoring this warning may create chronic stress, decision fatigue, and diminished confidence. Over time, mental and emotional health can decline. Responding involves reflection, prioritization, and practical stress management strategies. Believers who intentionally address anxiety restore focus, confidence, and purposeful action. Another warning appears when a believer notices a decline in empathy toward others. Previously, understanding and compassion-guided interactions, but now indifference or judgment gradually replaces them. This shift often develops due to stress, frustration, or emotional exhaustion. Over time, relationships weaken and opportunities to positively influence others are lost. Ignoring this warning erodes connection, trust, and emotional satisfaction. Interpersonal relationships may suffer significant strain. Recognizing the warning encourages intentional practice of empathy, listening, and support. By nurturing compassion, believers restore harmony, strengthen bonds, and deepen their impact on others. Believers sometimes experience a warning when consistency in personal routines begins to fade. Daily habits that once supported growth, health, and focus become sporadic or neglected. This inconsistency may initially appear minor, yet over time it reduces effectiveness, weakens discipline, and diminishes motivation. Ignoring this warning leads to stagnation, lost momentum, and decreased fulfillment. Life becomes reactive rather than deliberate. Responding involves reestablishing routines, setting boundaries, and reinforcing self-discipline. Consistent action ensures long-term growth, balance, and sustained purpose. Another warning appears when a person begins rationalizing behavior that contradicts values. Small compromises or justifications may seem harmless, but they gradually erode integrity and self-respect. This warning often grows slowly, making it easy to ignore until consequences appear. Over time, repeated compromises create patterns of regret and weakened character. Ignoring this warning risks long-term damage to credibility, relationships, and personal satisfaction. Recognizing and correcting the behavior strengthens moral alignment. Believers who act with integrity maintain trust, confidence, and alignment with purpose. Believers sometimes sense a warning when they begin avoiding challenges that require effort or courage. Opportunities for growth may appear intimidating, causing hesitation or procrastination. This avoidance often stems from fear, comfort, or uncertainty. Over time, avoiding challenges reduces skill development, resilience, and personal confidence. Ignoring this warning leads to stagnation, missed opportunities, and diminished fulfillment. Responding requires deliberate courage, planning, and action. Facing challenges strengthens character, confidence, and the ability to handle future difficulties. Another warning appears when a believer begins to feel restless despite having a comfortable life. Even with stability and routine, a sense of dissatisfaction grows internally, signaling that meaningful purpose may be missing. This restlessness often arises when growth, challenge, or intentional action is absent. Comfort alone does not satisfy the desire for significance or fulfillment. Ignoring this warning can lead to chronic frustration, anxiety, or passive living. Life may feel shallow despite external success. Recognizing and addressing the source of restlessness encourages reflection, goal setting, and purposeful action. Believers who respond intentionally discover renewed motivation, energy, and fulfillment. Finally, believers must recognize when the cumulative effect of all small warnings reaches a critical point. Signs such as fatigue, doubt, fear, distraction, impatience, and dissatisfaction may converge to signal a deeper need for realignment. Ignoring these collective warnings can lead to significant stagnation, emotional strain, missed opportunities, and diminished joy. Life may feel directionless, confusing, or overwhelming. This final warning invites believers to pause, reflect, and recalibrate priorities, relationships, habits, and mindset. The inner voice, subtle nudges, and intuitive signals all converge to guide meaningful action. Responding fully restores clarity, energy, purpose, and emotional resilience. Believers who heed these warnings strengthen personal integrity, enhance growth, cultivate meaningful relationships, and experience renewed motivation to pursue a life aligned with values, purpose, and long-term fulfillment. Life becomes intentional, rich, and deeply satisfying once all warnings are recognized and acted upon. Life constantly presents subtle and urgent warnings, often whispered through feelings of discomfort, distraction, fear, or doubt. Every believer who learns to notice and respond to these signals gains an extraordinary advantage: the ability to make better decisions, protect emotional and spiritual health, and live with intentional purpose. Ignoring these signs allows challenges to accumulate silently, eroding peace, clarity, and potential over time. True wisdom lies in awareness and action, reflection, self-examination. Disciplined habits and intentional realignment allow believers to navigate life with clarity, resilience, and strength. Each warning is not a threat but a guide, an invitation to pause, evaluate, and act. By embracing this guidance, believers transform daily challenges into opportunities for growth. Fear becomes courage, doubt becomes clarity, restlessness becomes direction, and distraction becomes focus. Life becomes a purposeful journey where every choice strengthens character, relationships, and fulfillment. Today, recognize the warnings in your life, listen carefully, act intentionally, and commit to growth. The subtle signals of today can become the turning points that shape a life of wisdom, clarity, and unstoppable purpose. Your future is not accidental. It is guided by the moments you choose to heed the warnings, embrace clarity, and walk a path of deliberate, intentional growth.